Hey everybody, it is your girl Marcy Thomas, and I am so excited to be back here with you for the first of many episodes of BGC Book Club for 2025. So, as you notice, we have a new introduction that shows some of the wonderful Black women authors who have been with us over the last couple of years, and I just look forward to each year, adding more and more new photos to that group. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I am coming to you as the founder of Brown Girl Collective and the BGC Book Club, coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, where we just had snow here in January, which is not usual for me, but of course my original hometown, Cleveland, Ohio, is no big deal to them. So once again, I'm excited to be back with you and really looking forward to getting into this conversation with someone who's been on my radar for a while. So it's a pleasure to have her join us as our first guest for the year. And that is Myah Ariel, who is here to talk about her first novel, When I Think of You. So let me just give you a little bit of background about her. She is the author of this debut contemporary romance, and it is her love of movies that led her from Arkansas to New York City, where she earned a BA in cinema studies from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. She also holds an MA in specialized journalism for the arts from USC Annenberg. For several years, Myah worked across multiple roles in the film and entertainment industry before pivoting to work in academia. As a medical mom and a hopeless romantic, she is passionate about inclusive love stories, and she has another book coming out in April of this year, which we're going to talk a little bit about that as we delve into our conversation. So without any further delay, let's welcome Myah to BGC Book Club. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, yes, it is such a pleasure. When I Think of You. It's such a glorious book. And even though I know it's been out for a little while, congratulations, because putting your first piece of work out into the world is quite a feat. And as you said, when we were preparing to come on, some people are just now discovering it. So congratulations are still in order.
Thank you so much. It's been almost a year. It came out April 16th, 2024. And I always love to see when it seems like new batches of readers are discovering it and talking about it online. So
yes, that's such a pleasure. So one of the things, well, you tell us a little bit about yourself at the end of the book, but we find out that there are things about this lead character that we're going to get into that mirror your own life. So how fun was that? Or was it trying to kind of tell little bits of your story within a fictional story?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like this for other debut authors, but for this, I've been a fan of the romance novel genre for a very long time, since my early 20s, and I'm now in my mid 30s. And so I really wanted to try writing a romance novel of my own. And for my first attempt, it just felt very natural for me to pull from my own experiences. So in a lot of cases, it felt like journaling. I like to say that this book, and I've said this before, but it's inspired by the movies, real life, and imagination. So the real life components of this, Kaliya essentially is like me 14, 15 years ago.
Okay.
I went to film school in New York City, which I talk about in the author's note at the back of the book. It's also in my bio. I'm a small town girl. I'm from Arkansas originally, but I had these huge dreams of wanting to be a part of the movies. And so against the odds, I went off to New York City and I fell in love with the city, and I've always been a hopeless romantic and thought I was going to fall in love in New York City as well. That didn't quite happen, but it happened for Kaliya. So those are sort of like where the life and imagination blends. I did graduate, move to Los Angeles, where I just knew it was all going to fall into place for me, and it very much did not. And so Kaliya, being this receptionist with dreams of more, that really was me. I was a receptionist on a studio lot for years, feeling like I was overlooked and passed over. And a lot of those sort of scenarios in the opening of the book in the office I really pulled from my own experience. And so I hope that it reads as really authentic, because it truly was.
It definitely did. And some of the stuff that's happening, of course, if you're in any field, like as Black women, oftentimes we are, we're having to do even more to get oftentimes less. Because
Yeah.
if you're not in this particular field, it will resonate with you, as the story did with me. So for those who haven't had a chance to read When I Think of You yet, just give us a little background about Kaliya and what the story is about.
Yes. So I love to say that this is a book about two Black film nerds who fell in love with each other over their love of movies. And so Kaliya is sort of a small fish, big pond, fish out of water in New York City. And so this is a dual timeline, second chance romance. She is she's a former film student who is now in Los Angeles trying to become the first Black woman Best Picture Oscar winner. And the Best Picture Oscar goes to the producer. So She wants to produce movies. And this comes from all of the training that she's had since film school in New York. But she's stuck in this dead-end job on a studio lot, answering phones, stocking kitchens, just being everyone's kind of assistant. And she's doing this in the name of sort of paying her dues and hoping that that she'll be able to work her way up this proverbial ladder. But unfortunately, it's been years and she hasn't been able to, until one day, the elevator rings, she's sitting at reception, and in walks this hotshot director who is bringing in his new project to the studio. And she looks up, and it happens to be Danny, who is not only this new Hollywood director who everyone is talking about. They're calling him the next Scorsese, but he is the boy that she fell in love with in film school, and the boy who also broke her heart. So he comes back into her life 7 years later with an opportunity to give her a boost in her career, because he does make her an offer that, spoiler alert, she can't really refuse to work on this production. But she also wants to guard her heart because she doesn't trust him. And as the story goes on, we learn about the pre-production process. And we also learn what went wrong the first time, and can they make it work the second time around.
Yes, that is definitely what the story is. And I love it because there are a few things happening in the book. Of course, there's the romance aspect.
Yes.
But then we get a chance to learn a lot about what it looks like for someone who may have gone and gotten an education and be prepared, maybe have some feathers in their cap already in the Hollywood zone, what that looks like for a person who's trying to break in what you may say is a more traditional way. Because, of course, we know there are people who kind of take it upon themselves, like the Issa Raes and, and the Ava DuVernays of the world kind of have done their own thing. But for that person who's maybe looking to go what they think is the more traditional route. So there's a lot of learning in that. And then for Kaliya, what that means for her career, what is she going to do? So we're actually seeing a lot going on all at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And I really wanted, with Danny and Kaliya, I wanted them to be from different backgrounds and on different paths. And not only was that going to present tension and conflict for their relationship, which is always what makes a romance juicy. But also I wanted it to sort of be kind of an allegory for they're occupying different places of privilege in the industry. They're both Black creatives. He's a biracial Black man, but he also comes from a place of privilege that Kaliya does not. So she's total fish out of water, has no connections to this industry, just really found her way to New York City, likely on a scholarship like I did, and is really just running off of her own passion and her own talent and really nothing else. And so that's her path. Danny, however, has the passion, has the talent, but he also has all the connections because his father, Nathan Prescott, is a legendary Hollywood director who's won Oscars, who has, had decades of hit after hit in the town. And so he's been able to kind of, for lack of a better term, the Nepo baby benefit. And so, but at the same time, he still is a man of color. His mother,
Right.
Danny Prescott, is a Black woman. I thought that was very important that, his mother was a Black woman. And that story is actually the story that he's trying to produce into a film. And so being a Black creative in Hollywood who's trying to make a Black movie also presents another layer of tension. So there's just kind of these layers of complicating factors that not only complicate the relationship, but are complicating this world that I was trying to create, that is pulling from the reality of what it is like to be a Black creative in Hollywood.
Yes. And we have a comment. I love this book. I'm on chapter 18. Oh, yes. You're going to love it.
You're getting to the really, really good parts.
Yes. Well, thank you for your comment, Josephine. And I like that picture. That's a nice picture. Oh, so genius. Absolutely. And it is genius just in the way that you are telling the story of these people. Because for me, and we talked about this a little bit before you came on, it's like there's the whole aspect of you writing a book.
Yes.
That has aspects of what your own journey has been. It also is like Josephine said, I have to put that up, a story within a story. That's just like almost like a story within a story within a story.
Yeah. So the story within the story, I mentioned it briefly just now. The film that they're making called What Love Made is the story of Danny's parents, Nathan and Minnie Prescott, and how they met in the 60s when they were around 12 years old at when his mother integrated his father's middle school. And so Kaliya's story derives from my life. This mini story actually derives from my mother's life. And I've talked about this before. Being that I am from Arkansas, my parents also being from Arkansas, my mother was one of about 5 Black students to integrate Ridge Road, which was a school in North Little Rock, Arkansas, in the 60s. And so growing up, this was always a really sort of seminal experience for her, and something she shared with me often. And so as I was drafting this book, like my first draft, I knew that I wanted them to be producing a film, and I wanted to go through like the workshopping the script and the casting and budgets and scouting locations. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted that film to be on the page in terms of scripts. I didn't know exactly what the film was going to be about when I started. I was drafting the film in the summer of 2021. My mom passed away that summer, unfortunately.
Sorry to hear that.
So, and this was, heavy pandemic year. And so my sister and I went home to Arkansas to take care of the memorial. And I ended up getting an email from one of her fellow classmates. He'd read her obituary, saw my name in it, found my email, sent me an email. And this was one of her white classmates from when she was 12 years old. And in this note, he said, I never forgot your mom. And that he mentioned that one of the lines that stood out to me most was that at 12 years old, I don't know if I would have been as brave as she was to do what she did. And that it just always stuck with him. And now he's a grandfather, and it stuck with him throughout his whole life. And getting that email just sort of solidified for me, like, that's a story, 2 kids, 12 years old, from opposite sides of the track against all odds. And so one of the first scenes on screenplay scenes in the book is Nathan and Minnie meeting in the cafeteria and him sitting down and wanting to become friends. And so I thought, what if, against all odds, they became friends and then they fell in love, and then that love was worthy of becoming a movie. And that was Danny's sort of passion project throughout the book.
I love that because it is, an homage to your mom. Yes. And to others who went through that type of situation, because, many times we might think that, that was a long time ago, but you said the 60s. Yeah. It wasn't that long ago.
No, and also it's like hopefully we learned about this, the Central High 9, and we learned about Brown versus Board of Education, but that was the 50s. But the truth is that it took the rest of the South years and years and years. It was a trickle effect to actually fully integrate the rest of, schools that had been under the long-standing, dregs of Jim Crow. And so up until into the 70s and probably even 80s, there were still, segregated schools. So like you said, it's not like the history is we're not so far removed. And that was one of the things that I wanted to show that through this book, that it's not that, just a generation back. We can do this. Yeah.
Right. We're not that far removed from it. But then also within the story, and just for anybody who's never watched before, we don't give spoilers, just a little bit, so you can kind of know what's in the book, so you're not taken by surprise when you pick it up to read it. But one of the other things from the Hollywood aspect, it also brings up, and you've already kind of alluded to it, that there's issues with making the film. And how many times, like now, do we hear that, why does it always have to be a slavery story? Why does it always have to be, about Jim Crow? Why do we always see these certain types of stories that seem to be the ones that get greenlit? And I mean that, but even though it may seem like we're seeing the same story, they're all coming from different perspectives. And it's important, especially in a time where people are trying to erase that history.
Yeah. And I feel like those sentiments, I understand them, but I feel like they come from a scarcity complex, a scarcity issue. It's like if we were given sort of the budgets and the freedom and the leeway to tell all of the stories that we have from all of the multitudes and all of the perspectives, then we wouldn't feel like all we see is the struggle. And so I absolutely empathize with those sentiments where it seems like everything is about the struggle. But I think it comes from the fact that we just we haven't had the opportunity to fully express the full spectrum of what it is, through film and television. And so the more that we are able to do that, the less it will feel like everything we see is one thing. So
Right. Exactly. And I love the fact that, as Kaliya and Danny are students, and they are talking about Black film and Black filmmakers, because that's also a thing. You think if you're going to unless you're going to a school that is a quote unquote Black school, or a school that centers, stories of people of color, our films and things like that aren't always recognized. So it was nice to see that part.
Are seen as artistic, or seen as at the same level. And that was that. So that the first day, so we have flashbacks throughout the book. Again, not spoiling, but that did come from my experience. My first day of my first cinema studies lecture in New York at NYU, our professor was a class of like maybe 60, 70 students. And he did, and I credit him in the acknowledgments, but he did ask us all to say, what is your favorite film? What's the best film you've seen and the best film you haven't seen? And as I'm sitting like towards the back, I'm hearing all of these Godfathers and Citizen Kanes and Clockwork Oranges and just sort of all of these classic films by white directors. And I'm sort of shaking in my boots because I don't want to say something that sounds like I don't know, artistic cinema. But there were no Black film directors named. And so I thought it would be a beautiful moment to have Danny and Kaliya sort of like see each other in that moment by both recognizing Spike Lee, who happens to be on the faculty at NYU in real life. So,
Yeah. I mean, because that's the thing. Oh, Josie reminds me of my media criticism class where I wrote a paper on Get Out.
Yes. Jordan Peele,
yes, and I mean it is something. I was I'm here in Atlanta, and Swizz Beatz and Alicia Keys' Giants exhibition was just actually, I think it's here for a couple more days. So if you're in the Atlanta area, go to the High Museum. I think you have a couple more days to go see that. But there is a picture of Gordon Parks in there.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about, people know Gordon Parks oftentimes for his photography, but, he directed Shaft, the original.
Yes. Yeah, so, absolutely.
And, people might not think, oh, it's Shaft, it's blaxploitation, but at the time.
Right, which is an entire era of film. And I was fortunate that I was able to take a African-American film cinema class where we did learn about blaxploitation, but that wasn't in the film history class where we learned about, the classics. That was in a separate, kind of side genre class that you had to elect to take. So, yeah, interesting.
Yes, it is. Oh, yes. No, that's my soror. She's here in Atlanta. Yeah, it is definitely worth checking out, but just to see that the ways that stories are told. And, just for you, being that, I know this is kind of we're talking about the book and you at the same time because they do, the story is you, the parts of you in it. But just really thinking about the fact you as a person who, wanted to be a filmmaker and still can be, just so we're clear, but to that understanding that sometimes the opportunity may not necessarily come the way that you think that it's going to come, but you are still a storyteller.
Yeah.
And so being able to pivot and say, okay, maybe things aren't happening necessarily the way I would have thought they would happen over here, but I could take and do something in another space.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned something like that in my author's note where I said, dreams may look a little different when they become reality, because since I was a child, I wanted to make movies. And it comes from growing up watching the Oscars and just sort of being enamored of this whole Hollywood machine and falling in love with stars and watching like Carmen Jones with Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte, and then learning about all of the set tricks from Jaws and E.T. and things like that. And I just thought it was so magical, but then to come to learn that you can create in different ways. And it might not only even just be like the format or the medium that changes, but it can also just be the timing, like I came out here at 21 years old, came to Hollywood at 21 years old thinking now is my time. And it wasn't. My time was 34 years old, And so sometimes life just kind of has to grow you up in a way or prepare you. Like there are experiences that helped me form me into the person that could create a story that was more compelling now than it would have been 14 years ago or even 10 years ago. So
And what I like about that, and we do see in our character Kaliya, it's a thing of not giving up on yourself. Yes. And not giving up on your dream, and understanding that sometimes you do have to pivot and do some things a little bit differently to reach your your ultimate objective. But this love story,
yes,
there is a lot going on between the two of them, because it's like we're together, then we're not together, then we're together, we're not together. But I mean, that's typical in
yes.
a romance. There has to be all this tension and all of these things that are going on. But through that, we get to witness them experience personal growth. Both of them do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I say this a lot in reference to this book. And it's one of the reasons why, in terms of tropes, second chance romance is my favorite trope.
Okay.
Because angst is my favorite element of any romance. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm just a dramatic person, but I love that push and pull and the will they, won't they. And I love in any second chance romance, that moment where they meet again for the second time, for the first time. And there's just all that tension where you're seeing this person that you used to love, something went wrong, and you're seeing them again. And there's like that instant attraction, the instant resentment, the anger, the question, the wondering, but that pull that pulls you back to that person. And because it's romance, that they're going to end up together in the end, because we are all about happily ever after. But you just can't imagine how are we going to get these people over the hurdles that broke them apart the first time around? And why should we? Why should we? And so that's the challenge as the author. And also, I mean, as much as this book is a romance novel and inspired by romance novels, I was also heavily inspired by Black romance films, from the 90s. Yes. And when you go back and watch Love Jones and, even from the early aughts, films like Brown Sugar, or you watch, of course, Best Man, talk about messy. I mean, these movies are messy, you know? At a certain point, you're like, do these people even deserve a happy ending? Because they're hot messes. But at the same time, these are classics, and these are characters that stick with you for a reason, because they're compelling and they really pull on all of those kind of natural human tendencies that we have in real life. And it wasn't a dream world I was trying to create. I was really trying to create real people who felt tangible. And so I know that there are times where you just want to shake Kaliya and you just want to maybe smack Danny, but for me, that's what makes a story really like meaty, that I want to, keep turning the pages.
Right. And one thing about it is that we all have, messiness about us.
Yeah.
No person is perfect, and no relationship is perfect. I mean, like if you're looking at Instagram and all that kind of stuff, you might think that they are because you're seeing the things that
that's it's a picture being presented in most cases, and we hope everyone is just as well adjusted and happy and healthy as their
right. That's that little snapshot, but you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And one of the things, and you talk about it at the top of the book, that there are some themes of like grief and how grief can play a factor in how a person is dealing with relationships. And grief shows up in a lot of ways. It could be because you've lost someone, and you already mentioned, we know that Danny has lost his father, so there's grief with that. But it can be grief because of you thought things were going to be a certain way, and they're not the way that you thought that they were going to be.
Yeah, you're grieving and in a sense, Danny's grief comes to the forefront, but Kaliya's grieving too. She's grieving the relationship she thought she was going to have. Like, there's a point in the book where she sees Danny walk in with Celine, his life partner and business partner, and she says, those were the things I wanted to be. So she has to grieve the loss of that. She's grieving the career she thought she was going to have, because every day she's coming in and checking rat traps and getting, passive aggressive phone calls and people asking her to, clear the paper jams, and the milk is rotten in the fridge, like go fix it. She's grieving the life that she pictured for herself. And so every day there's like a new loss for her. And so, like you said, I mean, that's really spot on. Grief takes on different forms, and it does affect the way that we not only present ourselves, but how we interact with other people in relationships as well.
Mm-hmm. Because that grief can bring on a sense of fear that makes you not want to be vulnerable to relationships.
Exactly. And we see Danny do that a lot because he's idolized his parents and their relationship and that love, and it's sort of frozen him. It's kind of paralyzed him because the loss, which again is not a spoiler because that's presented in the opening of the book, but seeing his mom experience that loss is something that, kind of makes him, and in a sense, he looks at Kaliya and realizes this is a forever type of, connection. But if it's something that I could lose, then I don't know if I'm ready to fully, dive into this. And so, and again, they're so young at the beginning, in the before times, they're so young, and it's, it's very hard to get it right the first time around, especially when you're in college. So.
Right. Because she's like 19, 18, 19.
Yeah, and he's like
years older.
Yeah. So there, and we know, I mean, I don't know if there's science around this, but I think the male sex kind of matures at a slower rate.
Yes. So yeah, there's that. But yes, just seeing, and then just the things that he's going through at the time and all of that with losing his dad. But there is a question I want to throw in here we don't want to forget from E. Lee. I love this book. I read the audio book and the ebook. Can you please talk about how Danda Wise narrating the book came to be, and share who might narrate your next book? Okay, well, we can definitely do the one for sure.
Yeah, I can talk about number one. First of all, I actually didn't get to listen to this audiobook until it published.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I didn't get an early copy of it. So I remember vividly, like the midnight of April 16th, downloading the audiobook as soon as it became available. And even though I wrote the words, I just could not wait to hear Dawanda's rendition of this character, because I had met her, we'd spoken about her connection to the story, and I just won't forget the experience of listening to my words for the first time through her voice and her kind of depiction of each character, and it just was very surreal. But yeah, so this happened through talking to my film agent at CAA, Rukiat Giwa, and just speaking about, you know, who would we want, who did I picture as Kaliya if this were to ever become, you know, something beyond a book. Danda was the first person that came to mind. Even if you look at my Instagram, I think one of the very first posts that I did before I had an agent, before I had anything, it was just like a fan cast, and it was Danda Wise and Jesse Williams. Those were just people.
Yeah, Jesse Williams, I definitely see him.
Yeah, who had popped into my head. And so we sent her team the book, and then within days, she wanted to have a conversation. And so we met over Zoom, and one of the one of the more meaningful experiences to me about this book is that as myself, a young Black woman at the time who moved to LA and was really trying to find my way in this industry, I've had the opportunity to meet several Black women who are, whether they're actors or producers or writers, I've had the opportunity to meet and talk with them about this book, and everyone has had the same sort of response where it's like, I saw myself in Kaliya. Yes. Or this resonated with me, or these are stories that this is a story that needs to be told. And that was exactly how the conversation went. And, you know, just the insecurities that were on the page, but the strength, and how it's a love story for her and Danny, but it's also a love story for herself, and how, you know, Danny's not the hero. This isn't a hero and a heroine. She's her own hero in this. Like, she not only saves him, but she saves herself. And again, I don't want to spoil things, so I'm not going to say almost just that, because that was kind of a spoiler. But that just first conversation, she just really resonated and connected with it. And then I think we said in that conversation, and I kind of slipped, like, there's going to be an audiobook. And from then on, it was just like, can we make the timing and the dates and all of that work? And it wasn't until, like, I think a month before the book came out that we were able to get her into a studio and record it over, I think, a day or a day and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, an audiobooks. And so I can't answer the second part because I don't know. The answer is I don't know.
I don't know yet.
I just know it's only 3 months away. I literally don't know about the audiobook for the second one. But that was truly a dream come true to have her voice, Kaliya.
Yes. And for those of you all who may not be familiar with Danda, let them know some of the things that she's been in.
So it's almost like kismet, because Danda played Nola Darling, the main character of the Netflix adaptation of Spike Lee's She's Gotta Have It. So originally it was a film, but they did a series adaptation. Right. She's also in the current series Three Women with Shailene Woodley. I think that's on Stars. She's done, she was in the Jurassic Park film. She was in Fatherhood with Kevin Hart. She's done a number of, one of my favorites is Someone Great, which is a rom-com on Netflix with Gina Rodriguez. It's sort of like a trio of best friends, and Lakeith Stanfield is in that movie as well. She's done stage, she's done television, she's done film. I mean, she's just a stunningly beautiful, but also extremely talented and just warm and genuine, authentic person, and just extremely, extremely talented, and has so much more to do in the industry. Also, Pool Man was a movie I think came out last year that she was in with Chris Pine. So yeah, she's definitely, look her up if you haven't.
Yes, if you haven't. She's doing big things. Yeah. And it is befitting that to have someone, because a lot of times there are people who are like professional audiobook readers. So to have someone who's an actual, actor, actress to do it, that's even befitting with the story in and of itself.
Absolutely, yes. It felt very, very right to have her do it.
Yes. Now I do have to talk a little bit about the music, because we know the books and we know the films. And in the back of the book, you actually list some, films as well as books that people can read and watch the film. Yeah. But the music is a big thing as well. When I Think of You. So what was it that led you to think of When I Think of You for the title for the book?
So yes, it is an homage to Janet Jackson's, I think, 1987 hit. And I actually, I was born in 89. And so grew up throughout the 90s. And my mom was a big, she listened to music all of the time. My grandparents, I'm looking at a shelf with like 40 of my grandfather's records. I have records back there. We've got like Billie Holiday, Mariah Carey, and Stevie and everything back there. Like music is just like, my record player is right here. Music is just something that I've grown up loving, and it inspires my writing. But particularly like that era of just like pop and R&B. And I remember driving to work to my, studio lot job one day. And I think I was listening to The Wave 94.7. And When I Think of You came on, and just that refrain, that's so in love, ooh, so in love. And it's just like one of those songs that just like, even though you're driving to this dead end job that you hate, like you cannot help but like bob your shoulders and smile and just like, and so I've always loved that song. And I was working with my editor, Essie Soga, because the working title we had wasn't working. And we knew that we needed to retitle it. And she said, why don't you just, think about some songs that you love. And so I won't talk about the ones that didn't make it. One of them, I actually cried because it was another Janet Jackson song. But I made a list and it went up the chain, and it came back that When I Think of You was the song. And it actually it felt so right because of, with this being a second chance romance, with those sort of flashback snippets where Kaliya is thinking of Danny and what they once were, and what they couldn't be because it didn't work out. Just the When I Think of You sort of made sense. But then as I sort of got to the end of like finishing edits on the book, there's even a part of the book where Kaliya talks about her younger self and how she misses that girl, but she wouldn't want to be her again because she was too busy chasing who she wanted to be, that she missed out on kind of enjoying who she was at the time. And I kind of feel that way about my college self, because I just did all these things that I wanted, and I wanted to look different and be different and have a boyfriend and all of these things. And it's like, I wish I could have just like settled into myself. And so the When I Think of You is also thinking of that younger version of me too. So the title just kind of took on different meanings as the book took on different kind of phases of itself. And I think that's just kind of what music does. Like I was listening to a song the other day where I was just like, oh my gosh, with the experiences that I've had in the past few years, this song has a whole different meaning to me. So that's what I love. And I don't know if I could even title a book without it being a song title at this point.
Right, because the next one is as well, but we'll get into that one in a few minutes. We'll get into that. But I love what you just said. And this is why I said earlier in this conversation that, yes, it is a romance. It is a romance. We see what's happening with Danny. We see, all the angst, all the back and forth, will they, won't they, if they do, will they keep doing, whatever, all of that.
Will they get it together?
We're dealing with all of that, and, of course, things and people that come up from the past and or present, all these things, we see all of this. But what I really was taking also away from the story is really what you just touched on, and the fact that, yes, what about the person that I want to be? Because it's so, and this is happening to her. She's relatively young, but it's some people, Kaliya, 3 times her age, who are still trying to figure that out, because you have this thing set in your mind of, this is how my life is supposed to be, and this is what's supposed to happen. And, how do you not get lost in that space where you can't find and discover your own self? And not a spoiler, but as you're reading the book, these are some of the things that come up, like, hey, what about me? I love you, I care about you, but what about me?
What about me? Like, I have to save me.
Right. And I love that, because as much as in a romance or a love story, whether it's fictional or even in our own lives, it's that other person, but what about?
That was and I think, like, even in writing this, it's like I always say editing this book was like therapy for me.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
there are versions of this book where like Kaliya was a complete doormat and Danny was a complete jerk. And then it's like you have to go back and like work through. And I had, beta readers and critique partners who would read this and give me, even my agent at a certain point gave me feedback. And it was like, and then you hear that perspective and you're like, oh, you're right. And so as like the ending wasn't even originally like that, And so coming to the place where that could be the ending was kind of like a light bulb, like an enlightenment moment for me as a person and as a writer as well. And so I don't know, that's why I love so much about being a romance writer, because I feel like it's just it can be a healing thing in
Right.
itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for your question, Josephine. One thing I noticed was your use of humor and expressive language to bring levity between heavy moments. How did you determine that humor would be a part of the tone of this book? Good question, Josephine.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And it's funny because so this is not, I don't consider this to be a rom-com, but there definitely are moments where humor is placed, and it's almost like, I don't want to call it a coping mechanism, but it is something that I've noticed about myself, which is that when I feel heavy or, those heavy emotions, intense emotions, I tend to just like crack myself up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tend to just make myself laugh. And so as I'm writing, I will make myself laugh with what I'm writing. And so if I can make myself laugh, that just, it comes through in the voice of my characters too. And because I'm writing first person POV, I'm writing in that character's voice, it kind of just comes through that way. And it did very much for Kaliya. And I think because she is so close to kind of myself, but still removed in a sense, it felt very natural for her inner monologue to be a little bit neurotic, a little bit anxious. I think that kind of comes with like humor kind of naturally leans towards, neuroses and anxiety. And I love reading a book that can make you kind of like snicker a little bit, but also the next page your eyes are stinging a little bit, and then the next page you're like upset because you can't believe what the characters have just done. And like you said, it does bring that much needed levity, because and some books need to have a deeper, darker tone to them. But with this one, there was so much with the grief parts that I wanted there to be some relief moments as well.
Yes. And you know what, Josephine and Myah, I know that just as Black people, we always gonna find a way to find the humor. We're gonna find something to laugh about at anytime. I mean, Black Twitter.
Oh my God,
on that,
I mean, one of my favorite things is to just scroll through ridiculousness. Like my sister and I will send each other memes at the end of like those Instagram carousels, which is the most ridiculous stuff. And I just laugh at the end of the day because that's kind of what you need in these times. So I can't imagine writing a book that didn't have some sort of comedic relief in it. So
yes. And she's like, you accomplished such a beautiful balance. Absolutely. And the reality of it is a lot of us are comics anyway, like to crack jokes. Because that's one thing I tell people, I'm extremely silly.
Yes.
I may or may not always show up here, but I am extremely silly.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. But just being able to tell that, and even with some of the other characters, I know we're coming short on time, and I'll make sure we have time to talk about the next book. But even some of the other characters that are in the book, like her best friend, Myah.
Yeah.
Yes, who she definitely has a lot of comedic things happening with her, just the way she deals with her life and her relationships and things like that.
Yeah, and I love that too, because I couldn't get through half of what what life throws at me without my girlfriends. And so I feel like it's so important, especially in a romance, to have these central characters surrounded by people who feel not like props, but like fully fleshed out real people who who are main characters in their own sense, who could have their own. Right now we're looking at Kaliya and Danny, but if you just turned, from a different corner of the room, Neha is having her own story right now, and Bella is having her own story, and Eric is having his own story, and they're fully realized people on the page. And so I wanted it to feel that way, and especially for Black women. I mean, there's that scene when they're at the oyster bar where they're talking about, like, we were obsessed with Sex in the City, but we didn't even pay attention to the fact that show isn't about us, and it's really not for us either. Right. So we are kind of writing our own story here, and that's sort of what that moment was about. It's sort of like a meta moment. Like, I'm writing that story, but they are, in living their lives through this book, they're writing their own story too.
Yes. Yeah, and that is something, of course, we've seen the new version of Sex and the City, where they have brought some Black characters
Everybody has a Black friend, or
everybody has a Black friend or a friend of color now, just to try to bring the balance, understanding, that we did leave a whole segment of people out. So that's just interesting to see that. But I loved having those perspectives, because of course we get to see her friend Neha, that she grew up with. I'm not grew up with, but known at college, and they have this long-term friendship. She's kind of seen the ebb and flow of this relationship of Danny, so she can come and put her 2 cents in along the way. And then of course Bella is new, and even in that, because sometimes we can be put into a situation with a person where maybe we wouldn't be friends.
Yeah.
But, being able to navigate those waters, it might be a little rough at first, and really finding friendship. It was good to see that as well.
Yeah. No, and I wanted Bella to kind of be, not too much of a spoiler, but I wanted her to be a character that you expect one thing and you kind of get something else. And so she's one, and a lot of people have said, oh, she was such a surprise. Like, a lot of people have loved her. And so I was really glad that character came out the way that she did.
I love that. Just a comment for both of us. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Rachel. Thank you for being catalyst for a broad range and diversity of authors and stories from our community. Absolutely. And please do listen to the audio of When I Think of You. And,
the audio is amazing.
Yes. So now, of course, When I Think of You is, I'll show you the cover again. It's already out. It's in full effect. You can do the audio. You can of course pick up a copy of it and read it. But I would not be doing my job if we did not talk about what's happening next, because you have another book coming out here.
This is the art.
But yes, I'll take this down. That's beautiful.
This is book number 2. It is a standalone contemporary romance. No ordinary love. Yes, after the Sade hit. This is the story of Ella Simone and Miles Westbrook. And I will tell you all that it is inspired by the Mariah Carey, Derek Jeter romance of 1997-1998. So Ella Simone is a R&B pop princess who is going through a contentious divorce from her record executive producer husband. And she discovers that she's got, the ironclad prenup that she signed threatens sort of the rest of her career. And so she hires this high-powered divorce attorney to sort of help her get out of this exploitative contract, not only with her record company, but the prenup with her now ex. And one of the stipulations of her divorce attorney is no scandals, no headlines, nothing like that. But, enter Miles Westbrook. We open they meet at the Grammys. There's a wardrobe snafu that makes it look a little bit sketch. And next thing you know, tabloids run with Ella Simone cheating on her husband, which is not the case. But then their teams have to kind of scramble to figure out, how do we fix this? And so it's not a PR, it's kind of more fake not dating. Like, everyone thinks they're dating. And so their teams have to kind of create a professional relationship for them where it's plausible that they weren't actually having an affair, but in the process, they do end up falling for each other, as one does. And so Miles himself has just come out of his own divorce. His team is working their way back from a tragic season where they lost in the playoffs because of a locker room brawl between Miles and the teammate who was sleeping with his wife. So, talk about mess, talk about angst. It's all in here. This is the book of my heart. There's so much music in this book.
Okay.
I was able to pay homage to so many Black women singers, songwriters, entertainers throughout this book. Wow. It is inspired by the Butterfly album, which was Mariah Carey's sort of like finding herself after her divorce. And in her memoir, which is somewhere back on that shelf, she talks about how the romance with Derek Jeter kind of helped her, find her own sort of self after being in a stifling relationship for so long, and how kind of liberating that was for her to sort of fall in love. And even though it didn't last, and in this case, we believe in HEAs, that relationship didn't last, but I was very much inspired by them to write this story about a baseball player and his R&B pop princess.
I love that. And I'm just it's scrolling by now. Your X/Twitter is always Be Myah Baby. So yeah, you love Mariah.
I love Mariah since I was like probably could talk. Like I said, born in '89, so it's like that whole time frame. I mean, I think my 5th grade talent show, I did a choreographed dance to the Heartbreaker remix in front of my entire school. So yes, I come by this honest.
All right. And Alicia says she's counting down the days till April 1st. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
And I've already told Myah I'm gonna get her schedule as soon as possible. My calendar for this space is filling up, so we got to get her on.
Well, I have a lot to say about this book.
Yes. So do you have like something short? I know we're getting close on time, but you have something short that you could share with us before we get ready, just to give you a snippet of what to look forward to in No Ordinary Love. And of course, you're going to get back and read When I Think of You if you haven't already.
Okay. So I'll read. Okay. Well, I will let everyone know. Well, actually, I don't know if I can say this yet. Okay. I won't say that. I can't say that part yet, but I'm going to read a couple paragraphs from when they first meet, like their meet cute.
Okay.
So this is Miles and Ella backstage at the Grammys. They're about to go introduce an award together. So, Miss Simone, if you come with me now, I'll introduce you to Mr. Westbrook, a show producer says with a polite smile that knocks me out of my trance. I smile back and follow after her on stiff legs. Something elemental happens in the room as the distance closes between me and Miles. Like somehow, just by walking 30 feet, I've traversed a continent and entered a new climate. At about the halfway mark, Miles seems to take note of my approach, and when our eyes lock, for the second time tonight, I can only hold the contact for a moment before I glance away to break the tension. In the final seconds before reaching him, I give myself the pep talk of the century. It consists of several get-it-togethers, a few girl he is just a man's, and a final resounding Elodie Ashley Robinson, your grandmama taught you better than this. So by the time I am squarely in front of him, I've mustered the poised and control to act like the well-adjusted adult I am, but only in the most uncertain terms. Hi, Miles. It's nice to meet you, I say, extending my hand with a perfectly professional smile. Ella. He says my name and tapers off, like he meant to follow it up with something, but never quite decided on what. But his eyes remain steady on mine, and there's an indecision there, like he's willing them to stay put rather than travel the length of me, like they really want to.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be good. I love that. So a couple of comments. So we have that to look forward to coming April 1st, and we're going to get Myah here as quickly as possible. She said, Paula, Happy New Year to both of us. Thank you for the good book discussion. You are welcome. I love your saying, what about me? Love your positive energy. Looking forward to reading your book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula.
Yes. And Josephine has asked, are you going on tour?
Okay, so I'm actually going to be at a Polycon in April, which is in Maryland, like it's in the DMV area. It's going to be at the Gaylord Hotel. So I'm doing signings and a panel for the big ApollyCon book convention. So that's the closest I'll be to DC that's currently scheduled. I am hoping to do actual bookstore stops in DC this year, but I will have to like keep you posted on that. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's my sister, Faith.
Oh, hey, sis.
We're going together.
Oh, okay. So yeah, she definitely can't wait if she gets to tag along. I love it. I love it. So we just got a couple minutes left because I know you have a hard stop. You have a little one to go pick up. But is there anything that you want to just share with those people who might have a desire to either be a filmmaker or even an author who might find it, kind of going through some of the things that Kaliya is going through, trying to figure things out and maybe carving out a path for themselves? You have any words of wisdom or advice to anyone who might find themselves in that situation?
I mean, it might sound trite, but like you even said it before, the whole don't give up thing. I think it's really important, especially if you have a desire to create. Don't give up on the just the fact that you may have your heart set on one thing, but just being willing to pivot, that it could be something else, and you could recognize a talent that you have that you never even imagined. I wanted to be a producer. At one point, I wanted to be an executive. I never thought that I was going to be the talent. I never thought that I was going to be writing and actually creating characters. It actually was very daunting to me. It seemed like something I could never do. But then I realized I've been a consumer of these mediums for so long, and that I actually did have a knack for it when I just sat down and tried. And I did have to put the work into studying the craft and, failing a little bit. Like my first draft was a hot mess and I had to send it out and get some feedback that let me know that it wasn't ready. But I think just not giving up on yourself, that if you want to be creative, you want to be artistic, and you have that desire, just sticking to it and not being afraid to pivot if the first thing doesn't work out. And then also, like I said before, recognizing that it truly is about timing. Sometimes things don't happen because it's not the right time for you. And it can be really hard. Like my sister can attest to when I was at that desk job and doing interviews for promotions. And sometimes to get the interview, I would have to read like 3 scripts in a weekend and write notes. And I was just struggling to fit into this mold that really wasn't for me. And now years later, I recognize that wasn't the path for me. And this one is so much more fulfilling than that one could have ever been. And so now I get to have conversations about potential movies from stories that I've written. And it's like, that's a whole dream that I never would have imagined. And so I think just kind of trusting the path that you're on is also some advice that I would give to you.
I love that. And every year at the end of the year, we just recently did it. We do the BGC best of the year. Right now, my words aren't coming out right, but it's like a recap of the best of the year every year. And one of the categories in that is like a book to film adaptation. So I look forward to one day.
Maybe there will be some news report.
Yes, to be able to include you in that category, because you already have the skill set, because about the screen. You can do both. So that, I could definitely see that being something that happens for you, whether it comes from one of your books or just something that you've written, just direct screenplay. I can definitely
That's definitely the next kind of hurdle for me, is like, can I write a screenplay? Because you'd think that like, it's 90 pages. A book is 380. But I mean, it's dialogue. I mean, it's a whole different animal. So that's something that's actually like exciting but frightening for me. So
yes, and we get just a little bit of snippet of that. And when I think of you, where you show like a page and a half, so I know a little bit, like you're blocking. Okay, I look to the left and take a sip of water, and then I say blah blah blah. All that stuff.
Exterior, street corner, like all that.
Right, exactly. It's very you have to be very descriptive. So. But thank you so much for your time, Myah. I appreciate you. And I am going to send you that link so we can get you back on as soon as possible, so that we can have a chance to talk about about No Ordinary Love sometime, in late spring, early summer. But
Yes.
thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. I'm going to let you grab some water, but don't hang up just yet. I promise not to take more than 2 minutes of your time. But thank you so much. And I will see you here in just a moment.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
All right, that was perfect. I was so thrilled to have Myah here. We have been back and forth in communication for a little bit, so it was good to finally make it happen. And I look forward to having her come back to talk about the next book. So just by means of a really quick announcement, just to let you know who's going to be here next week on the 20th, on January 20th. So we will have The Unexpected Diva by Tiffany L. Warren. That is our guest and book for next week. So I look forward to having this conversation with you as well. We are going into historical fiction based upon a real person. So this is going to be really good just to learn a little bit about this story and have a great conversation with Tiffany L. Warren. So I look forward to seeing you back for that next week. And of course, as always, please follow us on, follow on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe so you know all that's coming up, and be aware of not just the BGC Book Club, but also Live Well Sister, which talks about things that just relate to how we're living and, being well and all of those sorts of things. There are a lot of great guests lined up for that on Wednesday evenings. So thank you again for your time. And Josephine, thank you. Thank you. Your first visit. I hope it won't be the last. And we look forward to seeing everyone again real soon, either this coming Wednesday or on next Monday and all beyond, because this is just the beginning of the year. So there's a lot on the horizon, including Myah Ariel again. So thanks to everyone. And you have a great evening, afternoon, or morning, depending upon where you're watching. And we'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.